base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It took a minute. The base didn't want to drop. The base got broken. The base got busted. The base is fixed. The base dropped. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday edition. I think John messed with my settings. I'm going to blame it all on John because I'm a bully.
Cool.
It's one of those things, like, sometimes you try to solve the problem as you would logically, and it's like, all right, this is not working here. Let me go back to this. Let me fix this. And you just restart the programs, and everything just magically works. It's always fun like that, isn't it? We're taking your questions all morning. Brentford's goalkeeper maybe should have rebooted as well. That was horrendous. We'll get into it. We'll get into Brentford and the pinching manager not going up to the Premier League. We'll talk about Fulham going back to the Premier League as John wags his finger like he's Dikembe Mutombo or something.
No, Brentford.
Was that the Cookie Monster or was that Dikembe Mutombo?
It's Dikembe Mutombo. You mentioned Dikembe. So you have to talk like Dikembe.
I still think it's the Cookie Monster. Yeah, that broke me. Okay, we've got MLS's back, semifinals tonight. We've got Greenville Triumph tonight in USL League 1. We've got Atlanta United 2 in USL Championship tonight. All kinds of things to get into. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday, like I said, so you can be part of that in the Twitch chat, twitch.tv/soccer down here. The main room is popping this morning, as usual. You can get involved on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. You can also email us, soccerdownhere@gmail.com. Lots of different topics to get into, but let's start with Fulham and Brentford. The first 90 minutes was awful. I was questioning my existence during the first 90 minutes. It's a typical final, but this one felt exceptionally meh for the first 90. Fulham gets the breakthrough on a moment that goalkeepers dread. Got caught cheating. Got caught expecting the cross. This was something Fulham had identified, too. They talked about it after the match. This was something that they had seen in their research, and you have to give the research staff, the scouting staff, a ton of credit because they'd identified it, they got the look they wanted, and made the goalkeeper look foolish. What was worse, John? The goalkeeper getting caught out of position or the ridiculous dive after the ball was in the back of the net?
Oh, the latter. The token dive after the fact. It's like, oh, I'm beaten. I guess I should try to look like I should go after it. And you're horribly. It's like the body's on 7-second delay, and the reaction is the ball's practically past him, and he jumps. And
so getting beat and giving up. No, let me finish. Getting beat and giving up the goal that's probably going to keep you from 160 million pounds over the next couple of years. That's not as bad as diving and looking foolish.
I mean, if you're going to get beat, get beat. In a situation like that.
Don't get beat. How about that? Don't get beat.
But that too. But what I'm saying is, and Nathan Pugh has his question, his first question of the morning based on this. It's like, if you're going to get beat, just stand there. You're beat.
Oh, people would yell at him too for that. That doesn't fix it either.
You just I know it doesn't fix anything, but I mean, you're going to do the token 7-second delay dive and go, oh.
And if you just stand there, people are going to say, look, he didn't even move. He didn't even care. He doesn't care. He's probably on the fix.
So it's a no-win situation.
Yeah, don't get beat. That's the whole point.
That's like.
Don't get beat like that.
Cover that post and don't be 6 yards out when I did not have.
No. Hold on. You're oversimplifying it. Just stand on the post. Okay. Then they put in a cross and the header goes to the other post and you're dead there. Well, it's not that simple, John.
What I'm saying is this. You know how, like, when we played Little League Baseball when we were kids?
Yeah.
And we're on first base. And what we were always taught by our managers in Little League, take enough of a lead where you can go away from first base, but if the pitcher throws to first, you can get back with diving and you can put your hand on first. That's the margin that I'm talking about here. Something like that, where you can be as far away from that post as you can, but if something happens to that side, you can dive to it and get to it, is what I'm saying.
Well, that's... Go be a goalkeeper coach, because I think you figured out things that nobody else has ever figured out in the game. Nobody ever knew these things. It's not that simple, my friend. You don't know where the service is going, first off. You don't know. Now, you can't get caught cheating like that, especially when the other team's prepared for it. That's the issue. You can't overcommit. It's just you can't oversell here, and you get caught cheating, and it's something that had been spotted. That's the thing about it is it wasn't like it was a one-time mistake. This is something that they saw this goalkeeper has a tendency to do, and they did it. You're stuck either way. I mean, if you just stand there, you're going to get screamed at because people do. In the Twitch chat, people are saying that's one of the big criticisms that Chelsea fans have with Kepa is he stands there and giving up a goal. I've seen it with goalkeepers, and both situations rub you the wrong way. Mm-hmm. The late dive doesn't bother me nearly as much because, yeah, this one was exaggerated, but the late dive at least looks like, yes, you recognize that you were beaten and you're trying to solve it. If you just stand there, you look like you were beaten and you had no clue. And that's a worse look for me. So just don't get beat in the first place. Don't get caught like this. You have to find that balance. That was the biggest issue because from there it's a different game. Fulham gets the second goal. They really put the thing away there. Brentford gets one with pretty much the last touch of the ball. 2-1. Fulham goes through. They were the better team. They were... It looked like the more composed team. I expected more from Brentford in the 90 minutes, and it just looked like they never were all that threatening. Fulham wasn't really either, to be perfectly fair, in the 90. They created, I think, 5 chances in the 90 minutes, and Brentford created 4. But it just felt like Fulham carried the play more. Brentford wasn't good enough, and they go from being... in an automatic spot to losing in the playoff final over the last few weeks. And where do you go from here if you're Brentford?
I mean, you look at Brentford. Brentford, the last day of the regular season, had Barnsley. Barnsley was fighting for survival, and it took a goal at the death for Barnsley to salvage points. And that was part of the slide that Brentford had at the end of the year. If you'd taken care of business on the last day of the regular season, everyone else around you was losing. And so you had a chance to better your space if you had just taken care of business then, and especially toward the end of the year. So Brentford, for me, that's the question. I mean, this philosophy of theirs of Moneyball or whatever you want to call it, that's what it was referred to in one particular article, got them to this point, but where do you go from here? It got you to here. How do you get to better than here? And that's the question for me. Here, but Nathan Pugh's question, as I told you, he goes, better single moment. So he's taking what we're talking about and he's phrasing it differently. Better single moment. One, or A, the ingenuity and execution of the free kick, or B, the courtesy dive of the keeper on the free kick. So what's the better single moment?
Well, it's a giant duh. It's the goal. I mean, goalkeepers have to, in that position, know that a cross could be coming. They can't sell out that far. But the scouting, because this wasn't an accident. This wasn't even just the player, getting his head up and noticing it. This was something they had talked about. This was prepared for. It's a credit to the coaching staff and the scouting staff at Fulham. This was something that they knew could be coming, and they got what they wanted, and they took advantage of it. That's by far the bigger moment. It's not even close.
But so that was the first thought in there. And let me say this. The post-match interview by Scott Parker I thought was very cool, and it revealed a lot about the effort and everything that these coaches put into their seasons. And, you're talking about families and players and all the sacrifice and everything that's gone in, on the other side of the resumption of play and all these things. I just thought that the interview that Scott gave post-match was very, very refreshing. It was very open. It was very honest. And I like how Scott has grown into his position as manager at Fulham when he started off as the caretaker, and they were certainly going to be relegated. Now he's taken on the role, and you see how he's grown into it, and now they're heading back to the Premier League. Well,
I mean, the biggest thing is what he talked about, just how hard it is to do what he does. That's why I think at times people are very unfair in their criticism of managers. It's not an easy job. It's not show up for a couple hours at the training ground and then go home. It's not go to the match and go home. It's constant, and you do get a little bit of a break in the off season. They're not going to get much of a break right now. Their break was during a pandemic that they didn't really know what to do. So it's going to be really difficult on managers over this next year. You're going to see burnout. Scott Parker gets now. Today's the 5th of August. They will be playing a Premier League match on September 12th, so they get 5 weeks. And he's got to not just rest and prepare mentally and recharge. He's got to look at, where do I need to upgrade the squad? What are my options here? Who can I go get? Not that he's going out to negotiate these things, but his input is needed, obviously. So there's not going to be much of a break, and you're straight into training probably in 2 weeks, maybe 2.5. So it's rough. It's a difficult job. It's a very difficult job. Or there's some managers who maybe don't put as much time in, like Scott Parker. Yeah, sure, and those are the ones who aren't successful. The ones who live it and breathe it need breaks. Pep Guardiola needed a sabbatical year after his 4 years at Barcelona. He was so worn out. I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten to that point at Manchester City. I kind of expected that it would be coming up here at some point, that he would want to get out. He's not yet. It's why you don't see a lot of, you don't see Sir Alex Ferguson's anymore, really. You don't see Arsene Wenger's anymore, where they're just in the grind day in, day out, day in, day out. You need those breaks. Eddie Howe's a name that's come up a bunch. He's been through a really emotional run with Bournemouth. He needs a break before he takes another job. He won't be ready to take another job. So it's going to be brutal. It's a tough gig, and I think sometimes we just have to keep that in mind when performances aren't there, when things aren't quite clicking. These guys are human beings. On the women's side, the women they're human beings. It's difficult to do what they do. Having known a few managers in my time, to know how much work they put in and how much they sacrifice to be able to do it, it's substantial. It's tough, and it's a lot of pressure. Beyond the time, beyond the job, the pressure on it. And to be fair, it's not like Brentford's manager had a bad day yesterday. His goalkeeper got caught and gave up a goal, and that's what cost them. He didn't have anything to do with that. I don't think the manager was saying, okay, here's what I want you to do on every free kick. I want you to keep sliding out, keep sliding out, keep sliding out. They're not going to shoot. Don't worry, they're not going to shoot. No problem. No. But all of the work he put in this season is, in a lot of ways, wasted because of things outside of his control. That's what's so hard about it. It's a tough gig. It's very difficult. And coaching in any sport, it's a lot. It's a whole lot. So that was a good interview to give an insight into just, what it takes and what it means. It's tough. It's tough. And now it's going to get even tougher for Fulham because you're going up a level, and their ambition's not to be a yo-yo club. Their ambition is to be a Premier League club. They have to establish that, and they really need to establish that this year. They need to stay up, and they need to build a platform to continue to stay up.
I'm looking forward to seeing the pursuits that Scott Parker and the Khan family have when they want to bring folks in to add to the likes of an Alexander Mitrovic, who we've seen in the Premier League before, and players like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the build for Fulham is going to be like, what the additions are going to be for West Brom, and Chris Ashley, I'm sure, is along the same line as well, as I'm building to what we're going to be seeing at Leeds, what Leeds brings to the table, and who else Marcelo Bielsa wants to bring into the fold. So I'm looking forward to seeing those clubs and how they approach this very unique turnaround for a Premier League season.
Different mentalities, though. I think Fulham and West Brom are trying to establish themselves as Premier League clubs. Leeds has bigger ambitions. Leeds doesn't just want to be in there and be 13th every year. Leeds wants to be in Europe. That's a big jump. I don't think it's going to happen in 1 year, but they're going a lot bigger than just trying to get in. Now, they've got to be careful to not risk too much in that process to where they could slide back. But, yeah, they're looking bigger than Fulham and West Brom, so I think the stakes are a little bit higher there.
And with who we saw in the Premier League, basically from 13 down, I think that Leeds can make a first-year bump where they're not fighting for relegation just by looking at folks like a Brighton, like a Crystal Palace. I think that Leeds can make some inroads and be pushing toward the middle of the table if they approach things the way that they're looking for. I think that first year out of the blocks, I don't think they'll be fighting for relegation. I really don't.
Well, it's on paper too. I'm not that strong just yet to say that, because anything can happen, especially in a year like this. This is Marcelo Bielsa's first year in the Premier League. It's a different animal than anything he's faced before. So he's got to balance that. He's got to manage it. You talk about somebody who puts in all the time and is obsessive. He is way on the other side of Scott Parker's level of obsession. He's got to find a balance. And it can go south quickly for teams that get promoted. It can. So, yeah, on paper, that sounds great. But the games are played out on paper on the real field, and the games have real emotions attached to them. So I'm not saying anything like that until we see what these rosters look like. And honestly, I'm not saying anything like that until we get about a month in and we get a good feel for what these teams look like on the field in the start of the 2021 season. I had a question from Mr. Fantastic on Twitch about Eric Lopez's comments. He spoke to Fox Sports Argentina. Felipe Cardenas on his Twitter at Felipe Carr had a breakdown of what he had to say. Said that Atlanta United 2 acquired me because of a roster space issue, but they'll loan me to the first team for 6 months. I'll go straight to the first team. At least that's what my agent and Atlanta United sporting director explained to me. Felipe went on to say that Lopez believes that he'll be able to make his MLS debut when the regular season resumes, but he wasn't certain. I'm looking forward to playing with Pity Martinez. I don't know what's going on with that. The way it's been announced, he's an Atlanta United 2 player until January. If there are rule changes coming that would allow loans like this, they haven't been announced yet. Something's weird with all of it, and it could just be that we're missing some of the information in terms of allowing loans from a USL team to an MLS team, your USL team to your MLS team this year, because that's typically not allowed. So under the current rules and the way things are structured, that's not able to happen. But if these are the things that are being said, it kind of leads you back to reporting that was done before the MLS's back tournament about the ability to do these things. And they just haven't been announced yet. So we don't know. But that's what Eric Lopez said to Fox Sports Argentina, that he's looking forward to playing with the first team. He's expecting to play for the first team, and he's expecting to go straight into the first team. We just don't know how that happens yet on paper.
Yeah, Jason Nix asked pretty much the same thing on Twitter.
Oh, one thing about Mr. Fantastic. Mr. Fantastic says it sounds like he was promised playing time. No, I don't get that at all. And I don't think anybody would do that here. It sounds like he was promised to be with the first team, is what it sounds like. Playing time and being with the first team are two different things. We'll see. I'm still skeptical because you're talking about a young player with limited professional experience. I don't think you need to count on him straight away. Now you have Kubo Torres as well, so I don't know where Eric Lopez fits directly. I want to see how this plays out because it is a little confusing. But no, I don't read it as he was promised playing time. I don't read that at all. I think he was promised an opportunity.
Yeah.
Go ahead, back to Jason Nix, sorry.
Yeah, Jason was along those same lines. He just wanted to know, did he get anybody in trouble? And what are the rules regarding loans and signings? And you got into that. And Jason says, since MLS rules are so clear, I'm sure it's easy to explain.
Yeah, I mean, according to the rules right now, that can't happen. Those rules had been rumored to have some tweaks for this season because of the unique situations. We just haven't seen them announced yet. So right now, I don't know how that happens. But if rule changes happen, then that's how it happens. So that's kind of where we're at. We're all trying to connect dots that aren't actually apparent yet.
Yeah. Ricky Ricardo comes in this morning on Twitter and links us to the Stephen Goff information about tentative MLS schedules are beginning to circulate and the possibilities of what those matches are and when they could be.
Yeah, we talked about the timeline yesterday, and I mean, some matchups are popping up, but the timeline is still the same. You're looking at that weekend of August 21st for the first matches back, and it looks like some games are being lined up for that. The Canadian teams will play one another in the short phase of time. It looks like it'll be 6 games in 3 weeks, which will be difficult to manage, but that's where you're at to try to get as many games played as possible. So that's what it's looking like. We have not heard anything about an Atlanta United match as of yet. What time or what day or what opponent?
And, have we got any kind of an update on the Dallas-Nashville stuff from the initial reports? I haven't.
I was about to say, have you seen an announcement? No, so we don't have an update. Reportedly, there'll be games maybe this weekend, maybe early next week. Looks like they're going to play twice in Dallas, and then they'll make up another game in Nashville at some point. But they haven't announced anything yet.
Goff went on to report the first 2 proposed DC United matches at Cincinnati, August 21st, home versus New England, August 25th. And Stephen continues, he says, in many cases, it's involving short charters or bus rides. Teams will go in and out the same day, reducing the need for hotels. He also brings up the point of NYCFC, supposed to play at home September 2nd, but the Yankees are home that day, so he's expecting the match to be played possibly at Red Bull Arena because Citi Field would be more expensive. So it's something else to keep an eye on, where NYCFC is concerned, home venues, and where they would play.
Yeah, we knew that was going to be an issue. I mean, if you're not having fans, there's no point in paying to play at Yankee Stadium and paying to change it over to soccer. It's going to be cheaper for them to rent Red Bull Arena. You don't have fans, rent the cheapest place. I mean, it's set up for broadcast. It works for this league. It's a great venue. Looks good on TV. Done. I mean, it's just common sense. And I know people will get bent out of shape for non-common sense reasons, but there's just no other way to do it. That's the reality right now. It's different than it was when New York City booked Yankee Stadium. It's a very different situation.
What's going on Twitch? What are conversations like this morning?
Bernd Dursberger said, is the gap between the championship and the Premier League larger than the first and second division in other countries? He said it seems to be. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, because you look at the teams in the championship, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring up the table just so I can have a reference point for who those teams actually are. But yeah, I mean, you look at the championship table and you look at the teams in the Premier League, and you're going, okay, Cardiff was a tweener. They would hop up and down. Swansea, for the most part, well, ever since they've been relegated, they've been fighting to try to get back. Nottingham Forest has stayed in the championship. Millwall hasn't come up. Preston North End. And you just keep going down and down and down. And you look at the teams in the championship, and there seems to be a widening gulf between those Premier League sides, even the ones at the bottom of the table that are consistently there, than what you're seeing with the teams in the championship. So I would agree with Bernd that, yeah, I think that there is a widening gulf that is there with those two divisions.
No, he's asking about compared to other leagues, other countries.
Oh, well, compared to other countries, yeah. I mean, well, but then you look at, I mean, like Germany and Bundesliga 2, how many of those teams traditionally come up into the Bundesliga? How many of them are fighting to get in? And so I guess by that note, I would say, as I'm thinking this through, as I'm talking it through to myself, I would probably say, yeah, because you have more teams in, say, the EFL Championship that are popping their way back in, where you don't see that same number of folks from second division clubs, say in Germany or other countries, working their way to get into first divisions too.
I don't think the gap is as big between the championship and the Premier League to get in the door. I think the gap being in the door to being in Europe is maybe bigger.
Yeah.
because it's not like it's a top one or top two in like it is in Germany or in Italy or in Spain, where the European spots, yeah, you can see some teams sneak into Europa League and stuff. Now, I mean, in England, it's a top six, maybe more. So that's where the gap is to me. I think you see yo-yo clubs like Norwich, Fulham is probably in that boat right now. Yeah. We'll see if they can establish themselves. You see that, but there's a big gap between being that and getting in the door and sometimes losing your spot and sometimes coming back to getting into Europe. And that's where the gap is to me. It's not so much getting into the Premier League, it's getting into the European spots where I feel like there's a gigantic gap. The gap in other countries is between Bayern and the rest of the league and Real Madrid and Barcelona and maybe Atleti and the rest of the league. That's where the gap generally falls for me. Yeah,
I mean, if you look at, say, the top 7 teams in the Premier League, or let's just say top 6 because, that's what we're used to seeing in European football. And then you always have a Wolves that's competitive, and Arsenal that's traditionally in the European theater somehow. But then you draw that line at about 9, and you'd like to think that Everton and a Newcastle would be competitive trying to chase after European spots. But I think that right there at that 9 spot, you're seeing teams that I can't recall the last time Sheffield, Burnley, Southampton, Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Brighton, West Ham, and Villa were in the European theater.
See, I think you're expanding it way too far. Wolves was in the Championship in 2018. Wolves has gotten there now in a year. I'm not talking about a year. I'm talking about established. Like, you don't see as many Wolveses. You don't see as many Sheffield Uniteds. No. You don't see that as often in England. No. I mean, that's what I think. If you think differently, tell me. But
no, I agree with you. I'm agreeing with you.
But this is what I'm saying. Wolves is an anomaly right now. Wolves came back into the Premier League in 2018. To be where they are an anomaly. That's not happening generally. I mean, it is Liverpool, it is Manchester City, it is Manchester United, and they had to fight their way back into the spot. It's Chelsea, it's generally Arsenal, but they've slipped a little bit. It's Tottenham. It's a big 6 that now Leicester could be making it a 7, but they have to stay where they are. I mean, I don't know if we have a track record to say Wolves is in that category yet. Everton has flirted with it before. There's been clubs that have flirted with it. Leicester is probably at least dating it. Beyond that, I mean, it feels like a big jump. Like, you'll get somebody who has a magical year, but do they stay? Yeah. That's where I feel like the gap is. From 10 to the top 5, 6 in the championship, I don't think there's a huge gap.
No, and I mean, it was evidenced by the run-in that we saw in the end of this season with, what was it, 5 through 12 or 5 through 13 were all in that gaggle right there trying to fight for the playoff spots even to the last day. So I think that when you look at the championship, there's that big group that's right there. But no, with the Premier League, I think you're right. I think that it's traditionally 6 teams, Leicester making their way to try to have some kind of stability as a team that you would always see in Europe. Wolves coming through with what they've done the last handful of years, going into Europa League. It's been tremendous. Can they stay that consistent? Arsenal, we're used to seeing them in that big 6, which I guess is like 6+ if you want to call it that. And you're wondering if Sheffield can keep the momentum that they've built in coming up. I mean, they were great until they faded at the end, where I think they lost their last 3 in a row. So, you're looking at 7 teams and then a lot of folks who you really don't see in the European theater when it comes to the Premier League. But I think you are right. I think that the gap is wide in going from being a Premier League team to being in European football versus what you see in the Championship.
Mr. Fantastic says, has there been an update about New York City possibly having their own stadium? Says it's a bad look for the league. There was a lot of progress early in the year, a lot of updates on neighborhood meetings and things that were happening behind the scenes. I would assume that there's been some slowdown to that during the pandemic, which would make sense. But things were in motion for that to happen. But you've got to get the land nailed down. You've got to get a stadium built. It's going to take time. But at least it looks like there is a map to get there now. I do agree it's not a good look for the league, but you have to go back to when New York City was approved to come into the league, 2015, or honestly 2013, when they were approved. MLS was in a very different place, and I think they needed that second team in New York. They needed the money to come into the league. They needed the star power to come into the league. They needed the media presence to come into the league. And it's paid off, but you're right in that things are now different, and it is a bad look because you have what's happening in other markets that have come in since. So I feel like they've got that map, and I'm okay with where they're at. The problem that I fear is if anything has derailed that, they can't go back to just being, in an extended period of time at Yankee Stadium, and that's just what it is. If this doesn't happen with the stadium they're looking at, which is, I think, almost around the corner from Yankee Stadium, they're trying to put the parcels of land together and get everything done. If that doesn't happen, then you have serious questions about what is the long-term future in New York City. As long as that is still in place and that move is still being worked towards, okay, I can wait it out. But that's got to happen or something's got to change. That's the problem where they're at. I don't think they have any other options. So they've got to get this done. But yeah, there had been updates. Things were good. And then obviously everything has kind of gotten quiet with the pandemic.
Yeah, article in Newsday from about a month ago. Chief Exec Brad Sims was asked about it. And he couldn't say whether the plan would have to be altered because of the pandemic. He's quoted as saying, "It's hard to say whether the timeline has been impacted at all. I think that no one knows that yet. But I think that everyone's attention, both the club and all of our partners and projects, was in the right place over the last 4 or 5 months. We were in a great spot. We believe that we still are in a very positive spot. But when the pandemic hit for us, our focus went immediately to people, community, fan base. Same focus for our partners on the project and local elected officials, rightfully so. Major infrastructure projects when a pandemic's hitting is not your top priority. It's health and safety of the citizens that you represent," end quote.
Yeah, and I mean that's all correct. That's all real. So we will see what happens once we see some light at the end of the tunnel on everything. Christopher Abel with a different question. It'll lead us into Philadelphia and Portland tonight. What do you think the ceiling is for Brendan Aronson? Do you think he's good enough to succeed in a better league than MLS? The U.S. men's national team can grow goalkeepers on trees, but when was the last time they had a good playmaker? They haven't really had a international level playmaker. I mean, maybe ever. Depends on how you look at Pulisic. You could consider him in that category. He can play that. I think he's maybe better in a different role. Claudio Reyna was more of a deep-lying central midfielder, but he would have been in that conversation. Tab Ramos, in his time, really didn't get a whole lot of options outside of the United States. Played a little bit in Mexico, played a little bit in Spain. Brendan Aronson I think he can play in a better league than MLS. I do. I think he's got that ability. The trick for him has got to be to either stay in Philadelphia and continue to play and develop, or go somewhere where he's going to play and be tested. Yeah. It is not to go to a bigger league to sit the bench. It's not. If you go to a bigger league, a bigger team, and you're going to get loaned out for a year, okay. If the loan's going to work out and be a good situation, that's fine. I just don't want to see him get stalled out going like Freddie Adu did, for example. Freddie Adu went to Benfica. They had a bunch of coaching changes. He just stagnated. Josie Altidore, when he first went to Europe, just stagnated. It just get bouncing around, loaned here, loaned there, moving here, moving there. It just never clicked. You've got to go somewhere and play. And Aronson is just now, in my opinion, coming into his own. I think he's still got room to grow. He's still got things that he can do better, more consistently. He can have more impact on matches consistently. But yeah, he's a special player. I think he's got the ability to play anywhere he wants. It's going to the right fit. I think for a long time we've had this notion that, American players can't play in the Premier League. Well, yeah, they can play in the Premier League. Can they play for Manchester City or Liverpool? I think Christian Pulisic probably could, and he might be the only one right now. Could they play for that next tier? Could they play for a Tottenham? Could they play for a Manchester United right now? Maybe, in the right position. Could they play for a mid-table team? Yes. Could they play for a second half of the league team? Yes, obviously. I think that's where you want to get to is they can play anywhere. I mean, Brendan Aronson, ability-wise, can play anywhere in any league. Can he play for an elite team right now? No, he's not going to force his way into a final 8 of the Champions League level team. Can he play in the Premier League? Yeah, I think he could. There's a lot of teams he could play for and make better. Same for La Liga, same for Serie A, same for the Bundesliga. It's the fit. It's going to the right club, and it's going to the right manager who's going to recognize his talents and do that. I don't think, and I'm sure Jarrett's probably breaking things when I say this, I don't think going to Celtic is the greatest move. The only thing that's good about it is you get the European competition. But going to play in Scotland versus playing in MLS, that's not an upgrade for Brendan Aronson. The upgrade is playing in European competition and dealing with that pressure. So if he went to Celtic, he would have to start. He would have to go and start, and that's the only way it makes sense. Otherwise, no. Stay in Philadelphia and wait for a better opportunity. Because I think what's changing is seeing Alphonso Davies do what he's doing at Bayern. Seeing Pulisic, even though he's not an MLS guy. Seeing Miguel Almiron. Seeing talented players go from MLS to other leagues. And now Aronson has to deal with the U.S. player stigma that Almiron didn't, and Davies kind of didn't, although the Canadian player stigma isn't a whole lot better than the U.S. player stigma. But talent will break through. And now people are seeing that talented players can go from MLS into big established teams and do well. That's going to continue to change the narrative. Zlatan, I mean, that's part of it too. Zlatan doing what he did in MLS and going to Serie A and doing what he did there. It shows you that MLS is a good level. And if Brendan Aronson's doing well here, he can go play anywhere. But it's all about the fit. It's all about the fit, and it's all about going to the right spot. Don't go just to go. That's what scares me when any of these types of conversations come up. Matt Miazga, is he better off for going to Europe? I don't know. I honestly don't think he is, because he's bounced around and he's been loaned out, and he's not going to play for Chelsea. So, what's the point? You don't want Brendan Aronson to fall into that, because he is a special playmaker.
And, I mean, I look at a player like Josh Sargent, if I could get my upper plate to work this morning. And Josh was given opportunities, and then there'd be times where he would start a couple of matches, and you'd see something occasionally, and then he wouldn't play. And I know that folks are focused also on whether or not he actually fit in the system that he was in. And there was discussions about his endurance levels and things like that. And so, for me, what you're discussing about, you got to play, it's got to be the right place. You have to have a manager that wants to invest in what they see in Brendan Aronson right now and to have that continue to grow. That's, for me, those were 1, 2, and 3. It's like, you got to be in some place where you can play. You got to be in a place where you can grow and have a manager that has the faith in you from what they've seen previously to make sure that you can continue to get to the next level that you want to get to as a player.
You got to go to a manager who's going to give you an opportunity. And that's not always easy to find. It's not just about going to a club to put it on your resume. Because if you go at this age, if you're Brendan Aronson, you go to the wrong place and your development stalls, you do more damage to yourself than having a nice name on a resume and having a nice kit to put on the wall. It doesn't mean that much at that point. Chris goes on to say, with Pulisic being ahead of Aronson on the depth chart, where can Aronson play to help out the national team? Between Pulisic and McKennie, I don't know where on the field he would play. It depends on the shape. It depends on the way that Greg Berhalter wants to tackle this, because he's got a lot of questions with that. Who's going to start up top? Who's going to play out wide in the 4-3-3? I think Pulisic could play out wide. Who's going to play in the central midfield? What are the functions going to be of these positions? Because we've seen situations where Berhalter's wanted to play with a 6 and 2 players ahead of the 6, and the right back or the left back tucks in to help the 6 defensively. So if there's a whole bunch of shifting, that's going to affect who you put where. Right now, if it was me and I was going to play in that 4-3-3, I would play Aronson as the number 10 in front of, and I kind of lean to Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie. McKennie as the 8, Tyler Adams as a 6, but they can cover for one another. Aronson as the 10 as a playmaker. Pulisic on one side, out wide. The other side's up for grabs. The number 9's up for grabs. But I would play Aronson as a 10 and play Pulisic out wide. I think you get the best of it there. Pulisic as a 10 can work. We've seen it work some, but we've also seen it not work some. I think he might be more effective out wide. You might be able to, he's going to have the freedom to come inside. He's going to have the freedom to come in and play with Aronson and kind of create a dual 10 situation, especially if, they'll say, he's on the left side and you have a left back who's bombing forward, or he's on the right side and you have DeAndre Yedlin who's constantly going forward. You've got those possibilities, so I think he can be out wide in a free role. Aronson can be as the 10. That's the way I would do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and what we've seen from Pulisic, at least when I've seen Chelsea, is where you've seen Pulisic out to the side where, yes, he does have the freedom to roam, but I've always seen him be dangerous out on the edges. And I think that to continue that when you're looking at your national team lineups, I think that is where I would see him as his most dangerous, is out on the wing.
All right, we'll get to Philadelphia, Portland with Mike Conti at 10 o'clock in just a second, but we've got this. Arsenal has issued a statement. They will be, let me get this correct, 55 redundancies in their organization. That's 55 layoffs. They're proposing 55 redundancies. Said, we don't make these proposals lightly and have looked at every aspect of the club and our expenditure before reaching this point. We are now entering the required 30-day consultation period on these proposals. This is real. They say in their statement, they talk about how they have received financial support from their owners. They have refinanced their stadium debt. It's reduced the impact of the pandemic on Arsenal. They've been able to continue to invest in the team. Winning the FA Cup was vital for the cash it included and the Europa League spot that it included. If that hadn't happened, I think this could have been worse. But they said in their statement, it is now clear that we will be facing more significant and longer-lasting reductions in our revenue than we all hoped. Current indications are that we will not have fans back at Emirates Stadium for the start of next season, and fans will only be able to return in limited numbers after that. The global economic projections are also very negative. This will impact the disposable income of our fans, the money corporate clients have to spend on hospitality and sponsorship, and the ability for broadcasters to invest in TV rights. That last part's key because that hasn't been brought up yet. We all hope there will be no second wave, but we also need to accept that that is one of the many uncertainties ahead of us and plan accordingly. So, Arsenal, that should be a wake-up call for a lot of clubs, a lot of places around the world, a lot of teams in this country too. Because if Arsenal's taken that hit and they're worried about a longer-lasting hit, this is the reality we've been talking about for months, and this is why they had to do everything to get back on the field now to limit these losses, but you just limited it. You didn't get rid of it.
Yeah, so we'll see what other teams come forward and mention these kinds of things as we're heading out of this season and heading into the next season, not just in the Premier League, but in all of football, and see what the impacts are and all that kind of stuff. But
I mean, I'm seeing some of the reaction of this. This is mind blowing. People, this looks bad. Well, I wonder if they'll do a U-turn if there's significant public outcry. They can't afford it, people.
Yeah.
Stop this nonsense about the whole, you can't put people on the furlough scheme because you're a big club. No, you don't have the money. You flat out don't have the money. They've got some serious issues they got to decide on with their roster as well. I mean, you got an option to exactly, as Ragamuffin says, you've got an option to deal with Aubameyang.
Mm-hmm.
And
you made a
it's
formal 3-year offer to Willian. It's on the books now.
Yeah,
too.
well, you did that because you were doing. I mean, that didn't. This didn't happen separately from the Willian thing. Like, we know that. I'm talking about things in the grand scheme of it. They haven't done anything with Aubameyang yet. They've got an option. They got to figure out if they're going to trigger or if they're going to try to restructure. I don't know how they keep him.
Yeah,
and that means you got to sell him now or in January. I think you got to sell him now. Yeah, you got to sell him now because in January, I believe he could sign a pre-contract. I'd have to see his contract. Actually, he might not be able to because of that option. That might prevent him from doing the pre-contract, but you need to sell him if you can't re-sign him. Willian, we're talking about a whole different level of money, and you're not talking about transfer fee either for Willian. But there was some people talking about Arsenal could get in the mix for Kai Havertz. This is real. This is not made-up stuff. This is not like looking for a handout. This is not PR stuff. This is legit, people. And this has to be understood across all sports. You know, this is the reality. You don't have fans in the stands. You're losing a bunch of money. You don't have as much that you're making from sponsors because they can't pay as much. You also start to look down the road, and is the TV money going to be the same? And this is a big question for MLS. Is the TV money going to be growing? I don't know. They're counting on it, and I don't know if that's going to be possible. The good thing for MLS is the number is low. So could it maintain or even grow a little bit? Sure, because it's low and it's a growing league. The Premier League is established. Is it going to be able to get as much? And this is the first time we've seen anybody say that there's real fear that they might not be able to bring in as much with their TV money. People expected the Bundesliga numbers to go through the roof with their deals, and it really didn't. They kind of held steady with what they were getting before, and they didn't get as many bidders as they thought they would. This should be a wake-up call for what professional sports is facing, and this is why it's been such a challenge and so needed to get back out and play, even to limit these numbers, but they don't eliminate them. It's scary. I mean, Abby's right here too in the main room. The TV networks are losing money. They're beginning layoffs. So the thing that will help pro sports in that conversation with TV is that right now it's one of the only television programs that is being produced at the moment. Outside of news and talking head shows, like that's it. You're not doing sitcoms right now. You're not doing these big dramas. You're not doing a TV movie of the week. Like, that stuff isn't happening at the moment. Sports is. And sports is one of the only things that has helped with the cord cutting, with all of those things, because live sports still draw huge. So they're going to be somewhat protected, but somewhat is not completely protected. And that doesn't mean the networks are going to have the money to spend to continue just rights fees just keep going up. I think that those days might be done.
Word from the Express. Contract expires in less than a year's time, despite the two parties having held talks. Widely believed to earn around £200,000 a week. And the Daily Star, take that for what it's worth, says that with the FA Cup triumph giving them Europa League qualification, the extra finances that come with it, they will meet the pay packet Aubameyang is looking for. The Star, once again, take that for what it's worth, says that Stan Kroenke has given the green light to a 3-year, £250,000 a week deal, which would cost the club around £39 million. Inter Milan and Barcelona have also been linked to Aubameyang, but neither are likely to be able to afford to sign him.
There had been a lot of reporting about an option, and neither one of those had anything about the option, so I don't know what's real and what isn't with it anymore. The challenge is that you've got to keep him to be relevant. You've got to keep him to keep winning and getting into Europe and bringing in that revenue, because revenue is critical right now. But to keep him, you're going to have to cut money elsewhere. And that's probably the reality you're facing with this. Okay, before we get into Mike Conti joining us and MLS's back semifinals tonight, John, why don't you tell us about Steve Apolinski over in Decatur?
I could certainly do that. Apolinski and Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network, although Steve cannot take claim to the yard crew that is at my place and will be working its way to Jason's place by the end of the show here in the background. A couple different ways that you can catch up with Steve if wrongful death and serious injury cases are something that you need to pursue. The website, aa-legal.com. And if you go to aa-legal.com, you hit the URL. The second that pops up, you get a pop-up window. You can have a live conversation right there, 24/7, 365, or 366. Or you can shoot Steve an email by yourself at Steve, S-T-E-V-E, at aa-legal.com. Give him a call, get a free consultation at 404-377-9191. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine. Top 100 firms in the state of Georgia for wrongful death and serious injury matters. If this is something that you need to discuss it with Steve Apolinski and Apolinski and Associates, LLC. The website is aa-legal.com.
All right. This is the portion of the show where a producer would be doing things. We'd go to a break. We'd be hanging out, probably run and grab another drink or something. That's not going to happen here because we are very low budget. And we're going to get Mike Conti on the line right now with our fingers crossed that everything goes well for this to happen. I know John went weird for his video, but I think it's good now. And fingers continue to be crossed. Welcome to the behind-the-scenes portion of Soccer Down here. John's not a robot, so that's good.
Yes.
And Mike's with us. What's up, Mike?
Yay!
What's going on, guys?
Not much. We are saving the preview of the MLS's back semifinals for you.
Oh, okay, good, cool. I was more looking forward to action at the Fraction tonight. But
we can talk about that, too.
Guess we got Philly-Portland tonight, so which actually should be, I think, a really good match.
Yeah.
Really good match. But, I guess things are happening, right? I mean, I haven't heard
things are all over the place these days.
Yeah. I mean, apparently we're going to have a Dallas-Nashville game a week from today, but it hasn't been announced yet. Or I don't know.
Allegedly.
I don't know. Whatever.
I just wait till they tell me where to show up, and honestly,
that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at, right? Because what happened was when this whole tournament thing was being put together, we heard weeks in advance. Okay, yeah, it's going to be back, and it's going to be on this date, and it turns out the date we were given was not correct. So then we had to go back and scrap everything and redraw everything. It was a big mess here at the radio station. So now I'm just kind of pretending that nothing is going to happen until they tell us something is going to happen. And so far they've told us nothing. So I guess we'll see.
So it's not going to happen until it happens. It didn't happen, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's a weird feeling, isn't it? I mean, if Stephen Goff's reports are true. We're going to have regular season fixtures in this league next week. We're going to have Atlanta United playing 2 weekends from now, and we haven't heard a thing about it officially.
And we'd play 6 games in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. I'm sure there are draft schedules circulating, as Stephen Goff said, and you wouldn't be in full team training right now for no reason.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously something's about to happen, but I don't know. It seems unusual to me, and it sounds like in some markets you're probably going to have fans. If that's your intent, you might want to give people more than a couple days' notice to get their plans together and their tickets. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's a very complicated process that they're working through right now, and
I guess
we'll get the answers when everyone else does.
Yeah, I would imagine the issues that Major League Baseball's had at least have to affect it in some degree. I think it's down to individual teams like Nashville and Dallas was with MLS's back, but it does maybe make you pause a little bit and make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted in your protocols.
Sure. It does, and you have international travel in play,
that too.
It absolutely does. But I think we're seeing more and more evidence, and it's not just in Major League Baseball, it's in USL as well, that you're not having the virus rip through the league. You're having teams affected. In Major League Baseball's case, seems to be a lot of evidence now that the Marlins screwed something up. Seems to be a lot of evidence that the Cardinals.
But
all went to a
didn't Derek
casino
Jeter
or
say they
something
just
like
went
that.
for milk? The Marlins were just
Is that
going
what
out
it's
for
called?
milk? Yeah, that's all it
The milk
was.
run.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with what you're saying, Jason. I mean, obviously, MLS needs to be careful and make sure that they've got everything in place. But, I mean, the Marlins issues have been evident for a couple weeks now. And I'm sure they're taking a very close look at USL. And, honestly, compared to my expectations for USL, and I think the broad expectations for USL, they've probably exceeded my expectations a little bit as far as not having a ton of cancellations, not having a ton of, teams affected like I feared might be the case. So, I mean, I think you got enough evidence now to say that you can probably roll with this. You want to have some flexibility where if you have to cancel a match or postpone a match or move one, you can do it. But you really should be there now. I mean, we were really expecting something 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
End of group stage was kind of the initial report, and it just, I don't know, something seems unusual to me in all of this. And I guess we'll just wait like everyone else to see if and when a schedule comes out.
You mentioned unusual, and I'll go ahead and lean into Philadelphia here a little bit. The numbers that the juice box purveyors continued to give Philadelphia,
I'm insulted.
All the way through this tournament were unusual to say the very least. It was plus 200s across the board.
Huh.
Why was Philadelphia being so disrespected, do you think?
I have no idea, but I also think the line makers probably don't understand and watch the league as closely as maybe their employers would like them to. Does that make sense? If Jason were setting the lines, we might have more competitive action. And it's no disrespect to those who are setting the lines in Las Vegas. I don't know what you could possibly be missing.
Yeah, we aren't seeing the action. That's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that because we're not seeing where the dollars are coming in, and that does affect the line too.
That's a big part of it. I think a lot of times in other sports, maybe not so much in MLS, but I don't know. I don't bet on sports. I know that sounds crazy for someone who makes a living in sports. I don't bet on sports, but I would assume that a less educated betting public is probably going to gravitate to name brands that have had a track record of success. And in MLS, those name brands with a track record of success are Portland, Seattle, Toronto, right or wrong LA Galaxy, right or wrong LAFC, Atlanta. Those are your name brands that have won things that, the casual betting public might be more drawn to. People like us who pay attention to it would see a lot of value in Philadelphia. A trend that started the second half of last season. Really, I mean, if you want to go even further, it started with their U.S. Open Cup run in 2018. It was something that they kind of carried into the 2019 season. They finished boiling hot in 2019. Atlanta United played an outstanding knockout game against them in the conference semifinal to knock them out. It was not easy. Atlanta United had to play great. And then, again, started the 2020 season. They had two, I thought, validating results that gave them credibility. And then, you put them in a group that looked like it was a pretty easy group. Now, as it turns out, that group has produced 2 of the 4 semifinalists. But you put them in a very easy group. So, I mean, for people who really pay attention, Philadelphia would have been a really, really savvy play. But you got to remember that the line makers are setting odds based on what's going to generate action in the desert. And I think that's more where you are right now with tonight. I like Philadelphia to win this match. I think the question is going to be, is Jim Curtin going to be willing to play free and open, or is Portland going to dictate the terms of the match? And is Portland going to be able to grind this into a scoreless draw that immediately goes into penalties. That's probably the way they would like to play this, or try to hit on a late counter and get out of there with a 1-0 win. I don't know what Philadelphia's ambition is going to be tonight. We'll see. I think it's a real contrast in style. I think Philadelphia and Orlando have been the two best teams in this tournament, to be quite honest with you. As I see it, I think Minnesota is probably third, Portland fourth. If I have to do my rankings, I'd say Philly, Orlando would be 1A, 1B. So we'll see. I think it's just going to come down to who gets to dictate the terms tonight. Hopefully for Philadelphia, it's Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia is the one who can adapt more. I think they can damage you with the ball or without the ball. And that's a credit to Jim Curtin and the job he's done. And Katie Weaver chimes in on Twitch, and I agree. I think Jim Curtin probably loves the fact that they're the underdog in all of these matches. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Gives him something easy to sell. But looking back at the past few meetings with these two teams, Giovanni Savarese has not lost to Philadelphia in charge of Portland. Really? And they've won handily. Even going back to 17, Caleb Porter's last year with Portland. Portland won 3-1. Portland won 3-0 in 2018 at home. They went to Philadelphia in 2019 and won 3-1. That was in May. Philadelphia got much better.
I was going to say, that's before Philadelphia really blossomed.
True.
Last year. I mean,
very true.
I'm not saying that's an insignificant stat, but I'm just saying, put an asterisk on that, because that's before Philadelphia really put it all together, I thought.
Last 4 games in all competitions, Portland has beaten Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I think Philly's playing better in this tournament, but I think Portland's playing really well. And my guess is that Portland is cagey in this, in the classic Giovanni Savarese way of protecting, of not risking too much, especially early, building into the game a bit, and then unleashing Diego Valeri. Now, my question is, does Valeri start or does he come off the bench again? He's turned into a really good super sub for Gio. I want to see if they're able to give him 90 minutes here, or if they decide, you know what, we're going to grind it out for 45 and we're going to bring him on at halftime. Gio feels like one of the managers that is grabbing onto this whole 5-sub idea and using it tactically. Valeri's a perfect fit for that right now, where you're trying to manage his minutes in these games in a short period of time and get the most out of him. That might be the best way to manage this match tonight if you're Gio.
You ready for a crazy stat?
Let's do it.
You might already know this.
What we got?
Philadelphia has never made Champions League.
Nope. Yep.
They have never made Champions League. So here they are now, 2 wins away from doing it. And look, I don't know how much of a motivator
that's
that
actually funny. 3 of the 4 have not made Champions League ever.
Minnesota and Orlando definitely have not.
Yeah. Portland won MLS Cup in 15, so they've been there. They're the only ones.
Yeah. Interesting. So, I mean, if Philly wins tonight, we're short of having a first-time Champions League entrant. That could be kind of cool. I mean, you're also playing for $1 million. I mean, there's a lot still on the line. Now, I do wonder for teams like Orlando, who have been in the bubble for what feels like forever now. Does bubble fatigue start to set in a little bit? You're down to only 4 teams left in the bubble. They built a fence between the Swan and the Dolphin. You're only in 1 hotel right now. You can't go to the beach anymore, I guess. I was reading. So I do wonder who's going to be able to manage some of the mental things better. And I think bubble fatigue is going to come into play. I really do. But we'll see. I mean, I think we've heard this attitude expressed before about U.S. Open Cup. Like, once you get past the second or third match, you're like, well, okay, we might as well try to win this thing now. And it might be the same. It might be totally different down there in Orlando, where it's, we might as well try to win this and win the $1 million now. But I also think when the whistle blows and you start playing, all of those thoughts go out the window. I mean, you're not trying to check games to go home. You're trying to win. But I do think that's interesting where, three of these clubs really do have an incentive that they've never really been able to play for before. Philly obviously got close. I mean, Philly's a 3-time runner-up in the U.S. Open Cup. So they've been in position to go to Champions League before. But to actually get there, this might be their best opportunity right now because I think they're the favorites tonight. And I think in a game against Orlando or a game against Minnesota, I would probably put Philadelphia as the favorite in that game, too.
I'd take the winner of this match as the favorite in the final.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, Orlando and Minnesota have played great, and they're nice stories. But I think Philadelphia and Portland have had the most control in their matches in this tournament.
Would you do something like MLS is back every year?
Yeah, I saw, who was it, Jim Curtin, who brought that up yesterday?
Yep.
Well, look, here's the thing. I've advocated for a mini Super Cup that you could start the week after the Super Bowl as a ramp up to the MLS season. And I think Taylor Twellman even brought up, combine this with Leagues Cup and add the Liga MX teams in there because it would almost kind of sort of align with their calendar where they could maybe make an adjustment and it would happen during their off season as well. I just, this tournament, quite honestly, and maybe it's because Atlanta United is out, this tournament feels like it's really starting to drag on for me. It's taking too long. So I don't know. And I'm looking at it again from a standpoint of a fan of a team that was knocked out in group. I don't know how much excitement that really generates for the start of the season if you have a month-long tournament and your team's out in the first week and you're sitting back and you're waiting now 3 additional weeks for everyone else to stop playing. So if there was a way, guys, where maybe you take, you take 8 teams, you don't play a knockout, and you don't play a group stage. You go straight to knockout, and you play like 8 teams over 2 weeks as a ramp up to the season. And maybe you take your top 2 in each conference in MLS and your top 4 from Liga MX, and you do it that way. I do like the idea of a different competition to start the season. I don't like the idea of making it a month long at a neutral site. Does that make sense? Like, I would not replicate the MLS is back tournament in the way it's been done. It's been too long and you haven't been able to play in front of fans. And I think the TV numbers are starting to show maybe a little bit of fatigue as well. Also more competition with baseball and NBA and hockey and all that. That's part of it too. But you're seeing the numbers start to trail off. I think people are, we had the excitement of the group stage, which was great. Now it really feels like it's starting to drag. And by the way, it's the same in the World Cup. Yeah. I mean, once you get past the quarterfinals and you're talking about 4 or 5 days between matches and there's nothing going on, even in the World Cup, it really starts to feel like it grinds and it starts to really drag. So this is not unique to the MLS is back tournament. But if you're going to do this to start the season, as Jim Curtin has suggested, make it faster and invite less teams. And I think, maybe even work with CONCACAF in a way where, if you have 5 MLS teams or whatever in Champions League, maybe you take the next 4 and put them in this tournament. That's everyone's playing in mid to late February. You could do it that way too.
Yeah, you'd have to do that to not overlap with CONCACAF. You could do it in a few different ways. I mean, you could do a Leagues Cup idea, but you'd have to find the time in the calendar to do it. You could do it as a preseason event, kind of the old school Grapefruit League kind of idea, and everybody goes down for a couple weeks in preseason. I'm with you. I'd limit it in that sense. But the thing about these tournaments, I think one thing that MLS didn't expect, they didn't expect LAFC, LA Galaxy, your New York teams, Atlanta, the heavyweights of drawing attention. They didn't expect all of them to be out at this point. Mm-hmm. So that's hurt it a little bit. I think the ratings have been typical MLS ratings, outside of the very beginning. They haven't crossed over. They haven't been able to grab a whole lot of new, although the demographics have been good, so at least that part's been good for it. It's the best they could do with the situation they had.
No doubt.
I think in Philadelphia, in Orlando, in Minnesota, and Portland, they probably have a very different feeling than we do because their teams are in it. And that's how the World Cup goes too. I mean, if your team get knocked out early, then you're not paying as much attention. If your team's still in it, then you're consuming everything about it, and it's all kinds of fun. So it's weird. I mean, I don't know really what else they could have done this year.
No.
Can they take this format and do something with it? Yeah, I think so. I don't know what it looks like, really. I keep going to Leagues Cup, maybe during a break in the calendar, because I think one thing maybe we've learned, and maybe one thing that comes to fruition coming out of this, we've seen it in leagues in other countries before where, for example, a team advances in Europe, and they're going to play another round in the Europa League or Champions League. Some leagues are far more open to rearranging the schedule to give that team a good opportunity, not making them play Sunday and then traveling, across Europe to play on Thursday in the Europa League and then come back and play again on Saturday in league. Like they're rearranging the schedule a little bit. I think you could see that here as a corollary to this. If you want to do Leagues Cup and take 8 teams from each country and take them down to Orlando or take them wherever to play a very small tournament that would take a couple of weeks. Maybe you rearrange their game before that. They don't play in the week before. They don't play the week that the league comes back. And you do that during the summer break. Okay, that's fine. You can do some things to make it work, but you've got to be flexible to get the most out of it.
Yeah, and again, like I'm not trying to condemn or criticize this year's
tournament.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like it's the best they could have done. Just from the standpoint of a team that's been out for a couple weeks, like if you put this at the front of the schedule, it does nothing to. In fact, it probably does the opposite. It does nothing to excite me for the start of the regular season. The other thing I would mention too is, in a lot of markets, when your team is not playing, they aren't being talked about. We're rare in Atlanta, where I think there's enough of demand for Atlanta United content. Certainly, we've had a managerial change. We've had a couple player signings, all that. So there have been things to discuss and talk about. But, I'm just trying to think of it. Well, up in New York, I mean, how much are the Red Bulls in New York City being talked about right now when they aren't playing? Probably not at all. Yeah. How much are the Revolution being talked about in Boston right now when they aren't playing? Probably not at all. So that's a danger that you've got to consider. Especially if you're going to put this on the front end of the schedule or stop the schedule mid-season. And maybe there's a way around that too, where you have like a bank of teams from another league or another country that you could book friendlies against while, tournaments are played out.
There's ways you could do it like that. That's for sure.
So, Mike, you mentioned the numbers for tonight, and we got into the juice boxes a little bit earlier. Philadelphia is at plus 167. Portland is plus 150. So Portland is a more slight favorite, and it going to penalties is a plus 258. A draw to go straight to penalties is plus 258. So once again, Portland's slight favorite coming into tonight.
Yeah, and I get that. I think Portland is. When you're making investments, you look for the trusted brands. Portland's the trusted brand. But I think Jason's right. I think Philadelphia will probably be more adaptable if Portland is able to dictate the tempo of this match. So really, really interesting match. Really intrigued. Also really intrigued, honestly, to see how the playing surfaces play. I mean, you've had some pretty heavy rain down there with that hurricane. And some of those pitches were getting a little bit chopped up to begin with because they've been used very, very heavily.
Looks like center court at Wimbledon by the time.
A little bit, yeah. So now you throw some very heavy rain on top of that. And I'm just wondering what the conditions are going to look like as well. I mean, obviously you have some pretty top-notch groundskeepers down there at Disney World who work with the league, and I'm sure it'll probably not be that big of a deal, but that is just one more element to throw on this, that since the weekend when we had our last look at this tournament, there's been some pretty dramatic changes in weather and conditions down there.
Who you like in the Adrian Heath derby?
Oh, Orlando is starting to feel a little bit like a team of destiny in this tournament, aren't they?
Adrian Heath's going to be upset about you.
Well, no, come on. I'm not Bobby Warshaw. I mean, I'm not going to hate on Minnesota.
Everybody hating on Minnesota.
Yeah. Well,
He'll take it.
I think Minnesota is deeper. I think they're more talented, but not by much. Orlando just kind of seems to be a little bit of a team of destiny. The way that they're getting late winners, the way that they're getting wins and penalties now. I don't know. Like my head would tell me Minnesota, but my heart kind of tells me Orlando. Just in the same way that Japan kind of felt in that 2011 Women's World Cup, like. You know, everything tells you on paper that Japan should not win that World Cup, but sometimes it just kind of happens that way where you're a team of destiny and you go and you take it. Maybe Orlando is that team, and maybe they would be that team in a rematch against Philadelphia. I'm not sure, but I would probably bet Orlando, but I think Minnesota probably is a slightly better team than them.
Minnesota has never lost to Orlando. 2 wins and a draw. Even in 2017, when Minnesota was bad, they got the win over Orlando. That was at home. I think Minnesota's a better team too. I think they're better on paper. I think they can hurt Orlando's back line. If there's a weakness with Orlando, it's defensively for me. Luis Amarilla is he's legit. He is a real talent, and I think he's got support around him. We've seen more from Robin Lod in this tournament than we saw last year. There were a lot of questions on him. He's been good. Ethan Finley's been a huge get to get him back and get him healthy. And then you've got the outside backs who can bomb forward in Gasper and Dotson. So I like Minnesota to win it. I think Orlando's been really good, but that destiny runs out a little bit here.
Yeah, I think kind of like tonight and kind of like in any World Cup, when you get to the last 4, no result's really going to shock you. It's probably harder to get to the last 4 than it is to get to the final in many ways. So no outcome tonight and tomorrow will surprise me. On paper, I would say, again, Philadelphia, Minnesota. But if it ends up being Portland, Orlando, I wouldn't be shocked at all.
Who's in the Mike Conti spot shadow for tonight's game? I know that we like to look at specific players in these matchups, but who are you specifically looking at and going, I'm going to keep an eye on this guy tonight?
Probably Aronson, right? I mean, he's been kind of the media darling of this tournament, justifiably. I mean, he's been outstanding. But I want to see how cagey Gio is going to be tonight, and if there is a specific plan to ask questions of a good but still very young player and really put pressure on him. I think that might end up determining the whole match. So for me, it's Aronson. I think he's just been dynamite. He's played his way onto the national team in this tournament. I think a lot of people other than me have said that. I agree with that. Let's see what Portland does tonight to make him feel uneasy.
All right, I want to finish with this one with you, Mike. Bernd Dursberger and I have been going back and forth in the Twitch chat just about the presentation, talking about this kind of tournament. He said, he hopes that if they do it again, it's in stadiums. He said it felt like a practice facility.
It does. I agree.
I said that, I agree with that, and it looks different from soccer around the world. But I've really liked what the NBA has done with their presentation. It doesn't have that feel to me. Byrne doesn't like it. I do. The NHL's in the conversation as well. I haven't liked how the NHL has felt in the empty arena. I know others have. What do you think about the way that the different sports are presenting things, and what do you think football is going to learn from that?
Well, I think football is going to have fans. So it's probably going to be different. I think in football, you'll see something very similar to what you're seeing in the National Hockey League. I'm talking about professional football, where, in fact, I think they've already said this, like the first 10 rows of seats, they're going to be tarps over those seats, and they're going to have graphics, which will probably be in the form of advertisements.
Yeah.
So I think I think that's a certainty. I mean, you're going to see something very similar to the National Hockey League with the NFL. I agree with Bernd. I think honestly, and I don't want to sound. I have to be careful in how I say this because MLS did the best they could with the hand they were dealt.
For sure. I don't think they had another option. I really don't think they had any other option. So they made the best of it.
Yeah, I mean, their only other option would have been to play at UCF and Exploria and the Citrus Bowl and all that. I just don't think it was worth it.
They would have worn the field out. They would have worn the field out at Exploria. I don't think they would have had another option unless they were going to start taking people out of the bubble, which everybody hated the idea about anybody coming into the bubble. I don't think they had another option. I think this was the only way to do it.
Now, it was easier for the NWSL to do because you only had 8 teams.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the NWSL unequivocally looked better on television than MLS, other than that silly playground, which actually became kind of a thing on Twitter.
The kickoff times were a little difficult for those late ones with the sun.
It was.
There was nothing you could do.
But it still was in a stadium. I mean, it felt right.
Yeah.
To me, honestly, and again, MLS did the best they could. Where MLS really lost me was all the, fake jumbotrons and CGI and, people filming themselves watching the game so they can be on the jumbotron. Who does that? That looks weird. That's where I think you go over the top in trying to do too much. And I understand that MLS had a lot of sponsors that they needed to take care of, and the teams needed to take care of a lot of sponsors, but it looked very minor league to me to have logos everywhere, including superimposed on the pitch. Behind the end line's one thing, but the Adidas thing, I'm still hot about that 1 month into the tour. It just looks minor league to me. It looks minor league. But by the way, the NBA and NHL are doing it too.
Yeah.
So it's not unique to MLS. If they do this again, should they play in stadiums? Well, if they do this again, hopefully we're at a point where you can have fans anywhere.
Yeah.
And then, absolutely, you should play in stadiums. Look, I think the one thing that we keep forgetting is what we have seen this month is not going to be forever. It is not going to be the forever reality of sports. If it is the forever reality of sports, sports will be out of business. I hate to be fatalistic, but if this is the way it's going to be for the next 5 or 10 years where we can't have fans in anything, you're out of business.
You're in a different business, so, I think. I mean, you'll find a way to do something. It'll be a TV product.
Yes, and it will be much smaller leagues.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It will not be sports in a recognizable form.
Right.
So I think we need to keep this in mind that, hopefully optimistically, maybe half a year, but probably more likely a year from now, we're going to look back at what happened this summer and all the CGI stuff and, what the NBA did, basically making it look like a WWE arena, and what the NHL did, basically looking like WWE, and we'll probably laugh about it a little bit. It's the reality where you are right now. I actually think the NHL probably looks the best, to be totally honest with you. It just looks the most normal to me.
You guys are hockey guys. That's what Bernd said too. Y'all are all on that. I like what the NBA's done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't hate what the NBA's done, but again, it just doesn't look as normal to me.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I want it to look normal. The MLS thing did not look normal. The NBA does not look normal. Baseball looks normal. You're playing in stadiums. Mm-hmm. I even think the cardboard cutout fans that they're putting behind home plate, I actually don't think it's that bad. I was skeptical of that. I don't think it looks that bad.
It's better than the CGI fans, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that looks normal to me. Hockey, you're playing on the same sheet of ice in an arena. Seats are empty but covered. It looks normal-ish to me.
Yeah.
NASCAR has looked normal to me. PGA has looked normal to me.
Those
the
are
common
easier.
thread in all of that is you're using the same venues that you use when you have fans. So to Bernd's point, again, I'll restate, if you have to do this again next year, I'd like to see them, even if it's a situation where you go to a bubble city, and I'll use Atlanta as an example. I'm not saying it would happen in Atlanta, but just using Atlanta as an example. You could have a downtown bubble and use Bobby Dodd at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and it would look okay. Or conversely, you could have a Marietta bubble and play at the training ground and at Kennesaw. And again, it's going to look okay because at least it's a normal competition venue that has seats. And I'm just using Atlanta as an example. I'm not saying do it in Atlanta. That's what I'm familiar with. If you do it in New York, you could play at Red Bull Arena. You could play at that place at St. John's that New York City has used for Open Cup. You could play at Rutgers. You could play at UConn. I mean, there are many, many stadiums that are wide enough for soccer that you could use and it would look normal. That would be my challenge for these leagues going forward and how they present these fanless experiences. Try to make it look and sound as normal as possible. And I think some sports have done it better than others.
The difference is, and the NHL is the one that's went differently. 'Cause I don't know how their bubbles are necessarily structured. MLS and the NBA, NWSL is more on the NHL side too, because they took people out of the bubble to go play. NBA and MLS, you're still in the bubble where you're playing. Well, and that was part of the strategy.
Not to interrupt you, so you know what I would compare it to is what that basketball tournament thing in Columbus was. Okay, and we have knowledge of this because we've stayed in the hotel that they used. Okay, so they played at Nationwide Arena, which is where the Blue Jackets play. They stayed at that Hyatt that we stayed at, which is right across the street. Mm-hmm. It's not connected, but it's across the street. So basically, the only time you're leaving the bubble is to cross the street.
Yeah,
I know in Edmonton, what hockey is doing, all three hotels are within a block of the arena.
Okay.
And one of them is even attached to the arena. So again, I mean, when we talk about 15 minutes of close contact within 6 feet of an infected person, that transit time where you're going from hotel across the street to arena is not seen as a penetration of the bubble. So going back to my soccer example, let's say you have an Atlanta, and again, this is all hypothetical. I don't think this would ever happen. But if you have a tournament in Atlanta where you're using Mercedes-Benz Stadium and Bobby Dodd, you can have teams staying at the Omni and just, walk through the Congress Center down to Mercedes-Benz. It's not really penetrating the bubble.
Right.
You're penetrating the bubble when you go to Magic City.
Or going to get milk.
When you go to get milk. Yeah, exactly. That's where you get into trouble. So, I think we've and the media has crafted this idea that these bubbles are like ironclad prisons. They really, really aren't. And that's especially so the case. I think what the NHL is doing, quite honestly, is going to be a model for, sadly, the first half of next season in the NBA, the NHL, and potentially MLS, where you're going to have hub cities. And maybe you play 4 or 5 weeks at a time in a hub city, and then you go home and you go to another hub. Sadly, I think that might be the model. NHL has gone almost a full month without a positive test. So the way they're doing it is working so far.
Yeah, that's the step from what MLS and the NBA have done. And the NHL took longer to come up with their plan. MLS was the first one out of the gate, and people thought that the bubble wasn't going to work, and it has. And in the NBA has followed the MLS model where everything's on site. The NHL's taken that step to go a little bit outside, just a little, not much, but just a little, to do it differently and showing you can do it. So it's going to be fascinating. I mean, I'm with you. We were talking earlier before you came on about Arsenal. They're laying off 55 people, or at least they're starting that proposal because they're worried about how quick revenues are going to come back. This is only going to continue. This isn't going away even when you do get fans back in the building. It's going to be a process, and all these elements to it factor in.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I don't want to sound fatalistic about the future of sport, but
it's going to be different.
It's
It's going to be different for a while.
I think it's going to be different short term. I don't think it's going to be like this forever. And
yeah,
I'll say again, if it is like this forever, then I think we're talking about severe contraction of these leagues, where some teams are going to fold, even in, maybe not the NFL, but in the NBA and Major League Baseball and the National Hockey League, you're going to have teams fold if it's going to be like this for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
These leagues were not set up to operate in a global pandemic. So I don't think we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, I agree.
But when we get into these discussions about, how to improve the closed door experience, my response would be, if you're spending a lot of time dwelling on how you're going to make closed door things look 2 or 3 years from now, you're probably not even going to get there.
Hopefully not. Yeah. Hopefully you're just thinking about it for maybe the next 6 months. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Hopefully
anyway.
That's all it is.
Yeah. That's what we're hoping for. Thanks, Mike, for hanging out with us. We'll be back 2:00, right?
Yeah. Stoppage time, 2:00. And have a good call tonight, guys.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Make sure you're following him, Mike Conti 929 on social media. It's all difficult. I mean, it's all really challenging as to what things look like and how quick they get back, because there's so many things outside of sports control. And that's the hardest part of this is, MLS has done everything right that they could possibly do to do this. And they want to play more games, and what does that look like? We don't know yet, because there's things outside of their control. Society's outside of their control. The hotspots are outside of their control. All those things are outside of their control. It's the same for everything. It's the same for football. I mean, I know you guys on Twitch were talking about it earlier, UConn not having a football season. Well, they're an independent, and you have a lot of conferences not playing non-conference games now. So I think they'd already lost 6 games, right?
Yeah.
So if you've already lost 6 games, you don't have conference money coming in, you can't make it financially viable. There's no way you can do it.
No, and they're not the only Division I independent. So going down the college football sentence here, keep an eye on New Mexico State, Liberty. I think Army is an independent. BYU is another one, although I think that BYU will try to figure out something of a schedule, being one of those big-name independents. UMass is another independent. So just keep an eye on those guys as another part of the element of the college football season, because if you can't attach yourself to these non-conference games that now don't exist, then you're going to continue to see things like what UConn did today.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a precursor to the major conferences not playing. I don't think it's related. I think some people drew that correlation. I don't think it's related. Now, I do think the flip side of it is you're going to see more players opt out of the college football season, because especially if they're projected to be a very good draft pick next year, you're not getting paid. Why would you play? You could see the same in the college basketball season coming up. You're going to have a lot of different things that are going to come up in that realm. But, as we've said, that trickles down to college soccer, for example. And you've got a lot of conferences that are going to have reduced seasons, smaller conferences. I mean, pretty much everybody in D3 is not playing in the fall. All of the major Division III conferences are not playing. So Oglethorpe's not playing. Emory's not playing. Don't know what the spring looks like for them. Maybe you have a competitive season of some sort in the spring to make up for it. That's going to trickle down. High school sports, you're seeing some states cancel it, push it back. You're seeing others delay the start. You're seeing others just go full steam ahead. Georgia is a high school soccer spring sport, so nothing's been changed yet with that. But you're seeing in some states where it's a fall sport, it's being pushed to the spring. And maybe that becomes a permanent thing. In Georgia, it's because you're using a lot of the same facilities as high school football, and you're not going to get used to those facilities because of high school football. So it makes sense. I think it could work in other states in the spring as well. I lived in Kentucky for my first 2 years of high school, and it was a fall sport there. High school football is not the same conversation in Kentucky as it is here. So you were going to be able to get facilities and play games on like Tuesdays and Thursday nights or Mondays and Thursday nights as opposed to Friday or Saturday nights. It is what it is. all of that's going to be affected, and it's a different conversation for a high school program than it is for a college program than it is for a pro program. You have differences in testing. You have differences in resources. I mean, everything is being affected by it. And, we're all just trying to make the best of it. Oglethorpe not having a season, that doesn't help me much right now. So that would have been some nice extra cash. Not having the state high school championships, that would have been great. If we'd had those, that would have been a fun job to do. That didn't happen. So, these things do trickle down, as we're seeing with Arsenal. 55 people are going to be laid off at a club Arsenal size because their revenues are not there. They're just not there. And when you get down further than that, it's going to be difficult. When you start talking about those League One, League Two teams, I don't know what it looks like. I really don't. Have we heard start dates for League One or League Two yet?
I haven't heard about League One and League Two because some teams are still balking about starting because there won't be any fans.
Yeah, they can't afford it.
So, no, I haven't heard anything. I'll see if there's anything that's trickled in recently, but I haven't seen anything. The only thing I have seen are some of the front offices saying, well, no, because we would have no revenue coming in and we can't afford it.
Something's got weird with your audio, John. I don't know if you became detached or whatever. It got really low.
Interesting. Okay.
Now it'll probably break everything now, but that's okay. We'll figure it out as we go. Yeah, that's the issue. Abby says NAIA soccer is still happening for the fall. I don't know if that's across the board at the NAIA level or if some conferences are pulling out. We'll see. It's hard across the board. And it is going to look different for a period of time. Hopefully, as we were talking about with Mike, hopefully that's a short period of time, and we'll see where this goes. Ricky Ricardo says, do y'all think we see most of the 25th anniversary stuff that MLS had planned for this season next season? Was looking forward to the MLS Liga MX All-Star game. I think we'll see that next season for sure. It's tough for the league because you want to celebrate your 25th season, but not many people are in a celebratory mood right now, and you don't want to be tone deaf to that. So yeah, I don't know what the right way is for them. I do think we'll see that All-Star game next season. I think that's a definite because that's just a huge event that's going to be successful. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, do we get the types of digital properties that you would think, like a, all MLS team for the first 25 years, greatest goal, greatest team, like all these kinds of things. You've had some of the discussions, but, it's been muted. Do you try to push those back out here in the second half of the season? Do you wait till next year? I would probably wait at this point because the rest of the season is going to be so week to week. I hate that it feels that way, but even, USL playing, you worry each week. Like, okay, is the game going to happen? Because if a team has positive tests, game gets postponed. Orange County has had 2 games postponed, and they haven't had a positive test. They've had back-to-back postponements, and they haven't had a positive test themselves. There's so much that's out of everybody's control. And I think for planning stuff like that, you want to get maximum value from it. So I would hold it to next season. And then I know it's season 26, but you can look back at the first 25 years of MLS. Do something like that.
Harrogate Town became the second team promoted from the National League to League Two, and with that promotion, they're saying that the League Two season is set to get underway September 12, the same date as the 3 leagues above them.
Okay. We'll see. I don't know if that hasn't come from the EFL yet. I don't know if they've even announced the championship yet. I think it's just expected that the championship will start on the 12th. Alex Pacine says in MLS's case, they did show a lot of classic games at the beginning of lockdown. I don't know if they had plans to do that coming in. I think that was literally just, we've got to find something. It was really cool. I did enjoy it, and I'd love to see them do more with classic stuff. John's mic is broken, guys. I'm trying to fix it. I just cranked his volume up. Somehow his mic has gotten messed up during the show. It's one of those days.
Yes. Nick Brawley with a question on Twitter. He
Okay.
says, can you explain the plus and minus numbers. He says it may be a dumb question, but I'm trying to learn.
Explain.
Anytime, Nick, that you see that we talk about a minus, they are a favorite. The baseline is plus 100. That would be considered even money. If you were to invest 100, you'd get 100 back. If you're looking at a minus, you would take that minus number. Say we're looking at something that's a minus 150. You would have to invest $150 to get 100 back. Then if something's a plus, then what it would happen is, say if somebody's at a plus 150, then what you're looking at is it's the other way around. So a minus is a favorite to where you're having to invest that minus number to get 100 back. If it's a plus number, you're investing 100 and you're getting that plus number returned to you. So if it's a plus 150, you invest 100, you'd be getting 150 back. If it's a minus 150, you'd have to invest 150 to get 100 back. So that's all based on that plus 100 as your baseline.
Very good job. That is correct. It's a little different than I think people are used to with like point spreads, but yeah, you do see some of that. I've seen some point spread soccer betting. It's kind of strange because goal scoring is at a premium, so it's kind of a weird way to do it. This makes sense to me. I didn't get it at first either. It took a while to wrap my head around it. Chris Ashley is trying to organize a campaign to get you a new microphone. I said that you have a new microphone coming. You're probably having the same shipping issues that I'm having here lately. So I ordered a pair of shoes. Adidas ran a special, and then I found an even better special on their eBay channel, which was pretty cool. Ordered them, and it's one of those things where like they were supposed to show up. They said they were delivered. They weren't delivered. Then they showed up on a truck. Then there was another sticker, and nothing makes any sense. So I have some shoes off in the ether, and I did the grocery delivery for the first time yesterday.
How'd that go?
It was the first time I ever did it. It was over 90 minutes late. It was a 2-hour block, and it came an hour and a half after the block. So that part wasn't good. Maybe 2/3 of what I had ordered showed up, which is okay. Some of the substitutions were okay. Some of the substitutions were very bad. Watermelon Red Bull is what I wanted. Cranberry Red Bull is nowhere near as good. It is the bottom of my power rankings. Yeah, that was a very big disappointment. So I'm not happy with shipping these days. So maybe that's where John's microphone is. It's coming. It'll happen eventually.
Yeah, it's in shipping. Rich Ransom.
Yes.
Fulham is back up top. Great. Some wrestling mark owns a Premier League team. This should be interesting. I'm kidding. Okay, back to now being nervous about Philadelphia tonight.
Don't be nervous. Philadelphia should be okay. They need an early goal. They get an early goal, I think they're fine. I think Philadelphia can come back from conceding first. I don't know if Portland can come back from falling behind against Philly. Philly needs the first half they had in their last match, where that was the best 45 in the tournament, in my opinion. Chris Ashley is dissing Watermelon Red Bull, and Chris Ashley, I've liked you for a long time, but I no longer like you. It is the greatest thing. It is the best Red Bull flavor. It's number one on the power rankings. You need to recognize, sir. Byrne brings us back to something that's important because we haven't really gotten into it yet today. Atlanta United 2 tonight, 7:30, ESPN Plus.
Yes.
John's flapping his arms as he does sometimes. And Byrne asks, how would you set up against the Battery to finally beat them this season?
Well, let's see. I first off, what I would ask is who's going to replace Jared Van Schaik at the back and figure out. It's probably going to be some combination of moving Nemhard inside, Jay Bolt on the edge or something like that. I think not having that presence back there would be an attacking point for me. I know that not having Jackson Conway tonight is going to be an issue for Atlanta United too. Can Mackie Jope continue what he did last time out against the Miami FC and get the brace? Can you get the same kind of productivity for the second time out of the blocks? But for me, it's looking at the back line and attacking that edge would be the first thing that I would think of.
Well, I mean, you're going to attack the back line. You got to get through them somehow to score a goal, and you've got to find goals against Charleston. So I don't think you're changing anything. I don't think you're changing the way you play. You have to execute. You're going to be missing Conway, but you could bring in Amir Bashti in that role. He would drop a lot more than Conway does. You could play Mackie Jope in the middle up top. He wants to get in behind. He's not as much of a drop in and combine with others kind of player, so you'd have to adapt a little bit there. I like Bashti to replace Conway, but I don't know what that does to the shuffling. I'm kind of leaning to the 4-3-3 that we saw in the last match. Tony Annan reversed it from what had been a 3-4-3 to playing with 4 in the back. Coleman Gannon was the number 10 in that situation. I would move him out wide. I'd play Amir Bashti there. Have Njai and Will Riley as your 2 central midfielders protecting Bashti. Have Bashti just be a creator and get forward and join Mackie Jope up top. Also, shots from distance from him. He's a very talented, unpredictable player. He's got a huge opportunity here to establish himself in the lineup more. For me against Charleston, I think you've got to get them out wide. You've got to take advantage of them out wide. They're good down the middle. I don't think they're as strong out wide. So Jack Err's got to get forward and contribute. Caleb Wiley's got to get forward and contribute to the attack. Jope can be a presence inside the 18, so you can play crosses into him and let him go up and fight with those big forwards. But I think it's Amir Bashti who's going to be the guy who takes advantage of the space. That's what I'm looking at. I'm not with Chris Abel about a 5-4-1 be very defensive against Charleston. Charleston, if you do that against them, they're just going to punt the ball to you all day anyway. They don't really care about style in terms of trying to make it look good. They will just sit back in that case, and it'll just be back and forth, back and forth. It'll look like Pong, and I don't want to see that. No. I want to see Atlanta try to get out on the flanks, and Bashti picking up the second ball will be the critical element for me. That's what I'll be looking for.
One of 4 matches in the East tonight in the USL Championship. 5 o'clock kick. Philadelphia Union 2 and Red Bulls 2. Red Bulls 2 are a -208. Philadelphia Union 2 is a +407. Atlanta United 2 and Charleston. The 2s are a +163 at home. And Charleston is a +131. The draw option is a +249. Birmingham and Charlotte Independence, Legion are +112. Charlotte is a +198. And St. Louis FC at 8 o'clock hosting Sporting Kansas City 2. St. Louis FC is a -114. Sporting Kansas City 2 is at a +250.
Yeah, Sporting Kansas City 2 struggled a lot. Ricky Ricardo says, have we gotten any indication as to when Lopez will get here? We haven't. The interview that was on Fox Sports Argentina, I would assume was at least recorded in the last day. I believe it was live. So he's not here. I don't know what that process looks like for him to get here. And I honestly don't know because it feels like it's different everywhere you go in the country as to would he face any kind of a quarantine situation. Now, we do know that coming in to an MLS setup, and if he goes straight into Atlanta United 2, it's a different conversation. It's 1 test a week. You do that, you're good. I don't think there is an onboarding process with the USL side. There might be. With MLS, there is, and it's substantial. It's 2 tests that you have to clear in a 72-hour period. That's 3 days. So you get here, you show up, you have to start that protocol. You can't train for 3 days. You've got to pass 2 tests. Then you can start training. So even when he arrives, there's still going to be a delay to join anything for the first team, even training-wise, because you can't bring somebody in to train with the first team if they're not following the MLS protocol. Then you're breaking protocol and you're putting people at risk. So it's 3 days from when he arrives. We don't know when he's going to arrive. Abby with a different question. Do I get Red Bull for the taste or need the caffeine? I need the caffeine, but the taste is really good with the watermelon one and the coconut one. Some of the others are fine taste-wise. The cranberry one is purely for the caffeine because the taste is not so good. The regular Red Bull variety is pretty much the same. It's better than this. And depending on the scenario, you can add mixers to the Red Bull of an alcoholic variety that then you're not really worried about the taste as much either. So that can work too.
Patrick Sullivan, your delivery of the wrong flavored Red Bull, Patrick Sullivan says that's what you get for drinking Red Bull.
Man, everybody's going to take shots at me now. I ordered the Coke Energy too, and I didn't get any of those. So
wow.
Those didn't even show up.
So I guess I know what's on my shopping list as we head up to the fractions.
Yeah, pretty much. The Coke Energies didn't even show. I like those better. I don't like coffee. I've never liked coffee. I will drink it occasionally with a lot of milk and sugar. I just don't like coffee, and I do need some kind of caffeine in the morning for sure. So, yeah, Red Bull and Coke Energy's been the thing. Christopher Abel, you are incorrect, sir. For the Atlanta United Red Bull match in the MLS's back tournament, I did not drink Red Bull that day specifically because we were playing the Red Bulls. I drank Coke Energy. I drank the Atlanta drink. It didn't help.
You stayed with the home team and drank the Coke Energy that day.
It didn't help. It is fun to go to Red Bull Arena and get Red Bulls at the stadium. That's always good. It's the little ones, but still it's good. They had the peach little ones last time, and the peach one's another good one.
Red Bulls?
The what?
The little pony keg Red Bulls?
They're not pony keg Red Bulls. A pony keg and a 8.4 ounce Red Bull are two very, very different things.
Nathan Pugh says, boo, Orlando, boo. And he's booing several times over, and he has changed his tag name to Gamey Muffin.
Yeah. Yeah, I blame all the technical difficulties on Gamey Muffins at this point. That's still one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard.
Finished off that batch yesterday, I believe, and
3 weeks after it was sell by.
Yes, and now we have a new batch of both prospectively gamey muffins and the short little strawberry.
Hold on, why you haven't even started on a new batch and you're saying they're gamey? What is the sell by date on those? What are you doing with your stocking? This is getting ridiculous.
I was tagging them with the name of gamey muffins. They are not gamey yet. I'm just saying I was giving them the tagline.
Muffins are never gamey, and don't wait to eat them until they get potentially stale, not gamey, because that's gross. It sounds like you're rubbing raw chicken on them.
Ew.
Well, you're calling them gamey.
But so we have a new batch of muffins, and we have a new batch of the strawberry little micro danishes.
I'm gonna. They're called turnovers, John. They're not micro danishes. That doesn't exist. And I'm going to give you a piece of advice. How long does it usually take you to eat the container of turnovers?
15 in a box, so 5 days.
5 days. How long does it usually take you to eat the package of muffins?
1 a day, so 4 days.
Why are you buying both of them when it's going to take you 9 days to finish both at the same time? You could stagger them.
But that's 2 trips to the store in this current environment.
You're getting them delivered or picking them up?
Picking them up.
Okay. Are you going to the store more than once a week?
Try not to.
Are you?
I'm not, no.
Is whoever is picking up the food for you going more than once a week?
No, the boss is not going more than once a week either.
Okay. Well, then even still, you need to get on it and not do this breakfast prepping thing that Chris Ashley is accusing you of. You need to get the muffins, eat the muffins, and then eat the turnovers. Or alternate. One day it's a muffin day. One day it's a turnover day.
That's kind of what I try to do, but then I get locked in my very linear eating mode. And
then you get stale things, and it's no good. Ricky Ricardo asking about thoughts on the MLS Academy League announcement yesterday. You've added a few new clubs. Inter Atlanta has been added here in the Atlanta area. 113 total. You added 19 clubs yesterday. 30 MLS academies. 5 USL academies. Now, USL has an academy league as well. and 78 non-professional academies. Over 11,000 players involved. 6 age groups. It's U13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 19. They announced the governance structure, which was another element here. The clubs that were admitted, the categories that they were admitted under, the reasons why they got admitted. Player identification, that includes a pathway to pro, a player sourcing strategy, so like an identification strategy, a history of player development, and sending players to national teams or college programs. A club player development philosophy and methodology, and that's going to be very important for what MLS is trying to do and get out to these 78 non-professional academies, taking it from developing teams to go win state cups to developing players to go to the next level. They also looked for consistency and relevancy of coaches and technical staff standards and club projects and development and performance environment. So the structure in terms of competition will be announced later, and that's definitely on hold until you know more. It's quite an undertaking right now because I don't think MLS had intended to be in this role, but U.S. Soccer pulled out of the Development Academy, and MLS has taken on that responsibility. You know, for knocking MLS on this stuff, it's a big undertaking. I think they're figuring it out on the fly. So I'm excited to see some different faces in it. I think that's maybe the thing that's grabbed me so far is that you're seeing some new clubs admitted into this, so that could change some of the good old boys from just the sense that it's the same clubs producing the same players over and over and over again. You know, you have Lanier here in the Metro Atlanta area involved. You have Inter Atlanta involved. Hopefully this elevates some other clubs to where they're developing players. It's a big thing. We're going to finish with everybody going nuts in Twitch because this is very entertaining. Let's see. Chris Ashley has said that your work here in that conversation about your muffins and your turnovers, he said, this sounds like a conversation between me and the missus where I am sidestepping every question when I know I'm in the wrong. Yeah, that's a usual occurrence on the show. I get that feeling.
Speaking of Chris Ashley, he's got a big match tonight in USL League One, 7 o'clock. Greenville Triumph hosting Tormenta at Legacy early. Greenville's a -119. Tormenta's a +279. Belated happy birthday to Nitra Van Tassel. And the players, before they hopped on the bus yesterday, sang her happy birthday in Statesboro.
Abby is offering to deliver whatever you need grocery-wise or to help stagger. So you might need to get with Abby on that one.
Thank you, Abby.
Or create a better strategy for your shopping and stuff. Or get the muffins and freeze them immediately. That will help.
Huh. Did not know that.
Yeah, see, there you go. Abby teaching you things today. Domer's yelling at you. Gamey is a flavor type, not a texture. Stale is a texture, but texture does also affect flavor. But gamey has nothing to do with bread.
Okay.
Nothing. Christopher able to finish us off on soccer since the show's called Soccer Down Here. Would be interesting to divide the Academy League into 3 or 4 divisions and maybe have Pro-Rel involved. I'd be cool with that. The hard thing from that, from a youth perspective, is players will move up, and if you have, say, the U14 team at Inter Atlanta do really, really well, and they get promoted, do they get promoted at the U14 level with the next group coming through, or does the team that's going into U15, does the U15 get promoted? You can do that, and you can structure that and make it work. As long as all of the standards are the same across the board, I'm cool with something like that because it does reward the competition and the performance side of it. But everything has to be the same in whatever top division it is and whatever bottom division it is in terms of all those things we talked about, the player identification, the development, the philosophy, the methodology, the coaching. All of those things have to remain consistent. It's not booting clubs out because they haven't won games, because they're not necessarily here to just win games. They're here to develop players. MLS is overseeing this and I think investing in it to help player development for MLS. Nothing wrong with that. If you're able to take 30 academies and now take a platform that will include 113 different clubs instead of 30, you have a broader base to pull players in from. That's a great place to be if you're MLS. If you're Atlanta United's academy, now you've got other Metro academies that will be striving to be at the same standard of player development as you. Are they going to get there? They might not have the same resources, but they're going to be trying to get there. They're going to be on that pathway. So that means your player base of players that you are developing in the way that you think is right has now broadened because you have more clubs following that kind of philosophy. That's good for Atlanta United and potentially players who maybe don't make the Atlanta United team straight away, being at one of these other teams and performing well in this environment and then moving over or signing a pro deal out of that. You're going to get more of that. And this is a good thing for MLS to do, but it is going to be, at a time where investment's not easy. It's an investment, and it's not going to be easy to pull off. So I'm excited to see that there's still growth happening in this, and we'll see when the competition schedule comes out and what that can look like. Right now, youth soccer is a complete guessing game in terms of what games and tournaments and all that looks like. Christopher Abel might be running out to hit that Tormenta number, by the way. That was a little high. I was a little surprised by that. I don't know. I think Greenville gets the result, though. Chris Ashley will have a good night.
Yep, we'll catch up with Chris Ashley later on in the week for his 1v1 having to do with the Triumph. Reminders, Europa League is at 12:55 with a doubleheader and at 3 o'clock with a doubleheader. Copenhagen, Başakşehir, Shakhtar Donetsk, and Wolfsburg. The composite odds are looking at draws in both of those matches. Inter and Getafe is at 3. Manchester United and Lask is at 3. Inter and Manchester United listed as favorites there as well. Wigan's relegation was confirmed as they lost their appeal against the 12-point deduction for going into administration. They appealed the punishment on the grounds of force majeure. That's normally associated with acts of God, selling to a consortium, and then having that consortium sell to another consortium that had only been in business for 30 days.
What a plonker.
Basically.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's insulting.
So they're heading down to League One, and it's another sad chapter in English football, and so I don't think we've heard the last of the owner, who really may or may not exist as an individual, and the group and all that kind of stuff. So I think this is probably just the beginning of the tale that we've seen from Wigan, but they're going to start next year in League One.
Well, the owner exists as an individual. He's not a ghost. He's not a phantom. There's a real person.
The new guy, not the old guy.
The new guy is the old guy. They're connected. Like, it's the companies that are different, and that's the issue. It's real people. The EFL's vetting process is bad, but I don't think they sold it to a phantom. Wigan's in trouble long-term. There's other clubs that are going to be in trouble long-term. We'll see where that goes. That was a ridiculous appeal, and the phantom guy should be smacked in the face for being ridiculous. Rest of the day, 12:55 is when you got Europa League starting, CBS All Access, along with the 2-day NA networks. You've got 2 games. You've got 1:20. I'm hanging out with Andy and Randy on 92.9 The Game. You can also listen on the radio.com app. 2 o'clock, you've got stoppage time, facebook.com/929 The Game. Myself and Mike will talk a lot of Atlanta United. We'll talk Atlanta United 2. We'll talk about the game tonight. We'll talk about the Jonathan Gonzalez rumors. We'll talk about the just return to play. Maybe we'll know more by then. We'll have to wait and see. And then 3 o'clock, you got more Europa League games, CBS All Access, and the 2-day NA networks. 7:30 ESPN Plus, Atlanta United 2, and Charleston Battery, and John and I will be on the call. And then tomorrow, 9 o'clock, we'll be back. Hopefully right at 9. Hopefully not 9:05 or 9:10. We'll see what happens. You never know around here. We'll see how it goes. But thanks for hanging out with us. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.